LiSTNR production.
Welcome to this special bonus episode of The Briefing. I'm Chris Spiru. The Australian federal government is currently reviewing our country's surrogacy laws. In Australia, only altruistic surrogacy is legal and international commercial surrogacy is banned for residents of New South Wales, Queensland and the ACT. Experts say our patchwork of strict surrogacy laws are pushing Australians overseas to destinations where surrogacy is unregulated and riddled with risks of human trafficking and exploitation. Latin America has emerged as the latest hotspot for Australian intended parents seeking out commercial surrogacy. LiSTNR investigative journalist Claudianna Blanco brings you this exclusive report.
Everyone usually has ambition to be something in life, and just from a very young age, I just wanted to be a mother.
Unfortunately, because we couldn't do it with IVF, the next step was international surrogacy.
Surrogacy is Lucy and Paul's last chance at having a baby. I'm sitting in their living room in Sydney a few days before they head to Mexico for commercial surrogacy. Lucy and Paul are not their real names. I've changed them because if found out, they could face up to 2 years in jail and more than $100,000 in fines. Does that concern you or give you any anxiety at all?
Me personally, no, it doesn't bother me. Are they going to arrest every single Australian parent? I said, you call a lawyer and I'll call the press.
Thousands of Australians have found a pathway to parenthood through international surrogacy. The Commonwealth grants citizenship to Australian babies born via surrogacy overseas.
What really attracted me to international surrogacy was you're paying someone to help you, then you go live your life. You're helping them and they're helping you with everything that you've ever wanted, and it's like a win-win.
Mexico wasn't Lucy and Paul's first destination. They tried Argentina in 2022, but it wasn't to be. They waited 2 years to be assigned a surrogate. Then, the embryo transfer failed.
I was so trusting and hopeful with Argentina, and this is the end. Money's running out. I remember just being on the floor, just crying.
Lucy and Paul were first introduced to Argentina through an international surrogacy conference organized by a Sydney-based enterprise called Growing Families. Sam Everingham is the company's global director. Growing Families started as a not-for-profit.
I got involved in this because my partner and I had children via egg donation and surrogacy years ago, and it was a really difficult process.
Over time, Growing Families went from charity to business, offering seminars and a concierge service, referring clients to agencies who signed their ethical guidelines.
We put out a set of ethical guidelines for agencies to follow, and we tend to have a short list of providers in various countries who meet those ethical guidelines.
Intended parents, or IPs, like Lucy and Paul, pay for advice on where to go and which clinics to use.
They might be paying from $2,000 through to $5,500 for that support, depending on how many hours of support they want.
After their Argentina debacle, Lucy and Paul met with Sam Everingham, who advised them to consider Colombia or Mexico next. These countries are now among the top 10 destinations for Australian hopeful parents. Colombia is the most popular of the two. When I first spoke to Sam in October 2024, he'd just returned from a trip there.
I was quite impressed. It was amazing that the success rates seem high. The surrogate screening and psychological support is really good. The programs there are working well and certainly more smoothly than they are in other countries.
I was skeptical that surrogacy was running smoothly and ethically in Colombia. Surrogacy is cheaper in Colombia than in developed countries, like the US and Canada, where it's regulated. I'd seen human rights scandals involving surrogacy play out over the years in developing countries. Markets in Thailand, Nepal, India, and Greece had risen and collapsed, only to move to a new country and start up again. So I flew to the Colombian capital, Bogotá, to investigate.
Almost all surrogates have the same goal, and that is money. And that's valid. I don't question it.
This is a woman I'll call Eliana. She's a 5-time surrogate. Eliana is one of the 3 million displaced Venezuelan migrants living in Colombia. Desperate Venezuelan women have been moving in on the surrogacy business, and they charge less than the locals.
Nunca he dicho, son 10,000, son 15,000, son 20,000. No cobro.
I've never said it's 10,000, it's 20,000. I don't charge. I don't set a price. But I do want financial recognition. Those who have not experienced surrogacy don't know, but that feeling you get when they take the baby out and you see that couple looking at you with great admiration and gratitude, that is priceless. So that's why I told them, you pay for the medical process and then you pay me what you think I deserve for bringing your child's life into the world.
Eliana's carried for foreign IPs from various wealthy nations. They've covered her basic expenses, like private health insurance, accommodation, and groceries for the family she's left behind. Upon delivery, Eliana has been paid vastly different sums. The first time, she got $500. The second time, about $1,000. And the third time, about $2,500 for twins. Eliana's moved to Europe for about a year or more, twice, leaving her son at home.
I'm not going to lie and say that I wasn't scared. Every time I got on a plane, I thought, where the bloody hell am I going? Because it wasn't just moving to a new city, it was going to strangers' homes.
Ellos siempre mencionan es que no son chicas.
Clinics say that they don't hire girls who are engaging in surrogacy to survive, that they prefer girls with at least a high school degree, so they understand the information they're being given throughout the process. But they also say that this is up for discussion.
Como que eso es discutible.
That's Colombian psychologist and bioethicist Angélica Bernal. She's been researching surrogacy in Colombia for years. She thinks surrogacy presents a great financial opportunity for Colombian women if done right. But Angélica's found not all clinics and agencies are ethical. It's hard to know which ones are the good clinics and which ones are dodgy.
Las clínicas no serias son las que presentan todo este tipo de problemas.
The lax clinics are the ones that present all sorts of problems because they take in women for the sake of taking them in.
Angélica says there's a significant gap between what foreign IPs from wealthy countries are prepared to pay and what women in developing nations agree to earn. That creates an incentive for surrogacy agencies to hire impoverished women to maintain high returns. When surrogates are in low supply, recruiters are known to source women from wherever they can and ferry them to major cities in Colombia and internationally.
Me di cuenta que era muchos grupos de Facebook.
I realised that there were many Facebook groups where people posted ads asking for whoever was interested in surrogacy. They paid for apartments so that they could live close to the clinics. They were not exactly girls who were living in main cities, but also in different jurisdictions and nearby towns. And they were being transferred to major cities.
Recruiters are also known to coach surrogates to lie to pass the clinic's screening tests. This increases the risk of exploitation and human trafficking. The fourth time Eliana carried, she gave birth using the intended mother's ID. I asked Eliana if the doctors knew what was going on.
O sea, los médicos también sabían que no eras tú.
Obvio, porque ellos saben.
Obviously they know.
Aquí todo el mundo está claro. Esto es un secreto a voces.
Everyone here knows how it is. This is an open secret. The clinics, the hospitals, even the ones that work with public insurance. Everyone knows it. This is a business.
After that experience, Eliana swears off surrogacy. Until 2022, when she agrees to carry for an American couple.
Yo tenía una urgencia terrible de dinero.
I was desperate for money because my son was sick. I told them, ethically speaking, I wouldn't consider it viable to go ahead at this time because it's been less than a year since my last pregnancy. My body needs to rest for at least a year, but you're in need, and so am I.
Unfortunately, they go ahead.
One day I had this horrible pain and I was alone.
Eliana gets taken to the emergency room.
Yo casi fallezco.
I almost died.
Los bebés fallecieron.
The babies died.
Ellos a mí no me reconocieron absolutamente nada.
They didn't pay me at all. They didn't help me with the medications and I was in a bad state. I couldn't work for a long time, for about 3 months after that, because the pain and the bleeding were unbearable.
Eliana's experience is not a one-off. Angélica Bernal says it's common for contracts to favor the intended parents.
El contrato dice que cuando el bebé muere,
The contract says that when the baby dies, let's say due to complications during pregnancy or something like that, the surrogate is not paid the full agreed value.
It's no baby, no pay. Given the stories I was hearing, I decided to visit one of the clinics. As I walk in the meeting room at a fertility clinic in Bogotá, my heart is pounding. I'm undercover, posing as an intended parent. The clinic I'm visiting has a commercial referral agreement with Growing Families and signed its ethical guidelines.
We can barely hear you.
How about that? Is it any better?
Can you hear us okay?
I try to casually confirm that my colleague Dan is ready to record the conversation. Dan is my fake husband. We're meeting a woman I'll call Natalia. She runs a Colombian surrogacy agency that caters to Australians. We've told her we're a couple hoping for a baby.
Okay, guys, so glad to meet you. I'm just going to start making some questions so I can understand what you're looking for and what are your expectations. So first, what is your condition?
Right. So I'll start at the beginning.
Natalia explains her clinic supplies the surrogates, that the women must pass several rigorous screening tests, and that once a surrogate is assigned, we'll get some general information about her.
How many kids she has, her name, her age, and how many C-sections she has had or no C-sections at all. All the communication is handled by the clinic.
Do we ever get to meet the
Yes,
surrogate?
you're going to meet her when she's pregnant.
Okay.
1 month of pregnancy, we're going to make a virtual meeting so you can get to know her and she can get to know you too. If later, like 2 months later, you want to arrange another one, we can arrange that.
So IPs are not offered a direct line of communication. This is concerning, as many things can be lost in translation, let alone hidden in monitored communications. Before coming to Colombia, I'd heard that some surrogacy agencies take advantage of the public health system, so I wanted to find out more.
In terms of health insurance for the surrogate and for the baby, how does that work?
Okay. Baby initially is covered by the public insurance that has the surrogate, but we have private insurance that have an extra cost.
Colombia has a hybrid public health system. It's funded through government money and contributions from the public. Many surrogacy agencies are using this system for the surrogate's prenatal care and the births. Natalia offers me an option to upgrade to private insurance to access better services for the baby, but she says this is optional.
So it's a matter of our choice to pay a little bit extra.
Exactly.
Many foreign intended parents may not realize they're inadvertently adding pressure to a system already on the brink. One Australian parent I spoke to used the public health system and was not offered additional insurance options. They thought their surrogate was getting paid $15,000. I wanted to know if there was a discrepancy between what the surrogates are really getting paid and what the IPs are told they're getting paid.
Like, how much money do the surrogates get?
They're getting like about $4,500 final compensation after they finish all the program and $600 monthly.
For the 9 months?
Yes, for the 9 months.
Let me break this down. There's a monthly allowance, which is what a surrogate gets paid once they're pregnant. And then there's a final compensation when they hand over the baby. All up, Natalia's quoting about $10,000. But I've spoken to other Colombian surrogates and insiders who've told me some surrogates don't get a monthly allowance until they fall pregnant. One surrogate told me she got no monthly allowance for close to a year, even though she was undergoing medical procedures to get pregnant. I put Natalia's figures to the test with an industry insider who has knowledge of this particular clinic's operations. I was told the payment is even lower, usually about $7,000. Before I went to Colombia, Growing Families Global Director Sam Everingham had told me the programs there were running well. I called Sam again to put my findings to him, given he'd told me Growing Families vet all the clinics they recommend. In your last interview, you told us, and I quote, that you put out a set of ethical guidelines for agencies to follow. How do you trust the overseas clinics are following your ethical guidelines?
You can't force agencies to follow particular guidelines. We ask them to sign a document and to agree to adhere to guidelines, but we haven't got the resources to police those guidelines to check whether or not they are being fulfilled. And that's really why we're also relying on parents to come back to us with their own feedback as well.
Sam's admitting he can't control clinics overseas and that his business recommendations depend on the feedback of intended parents, on whether they had a good experience or not.
This is a really unstable landscape. We see providers who become too busy, starting to cut corners, start to do things badly because they've got too many clients on their books.
In a way, aren't you helping these overseas providers who can change at the drop of a hat, that can be very unethical? Aren't you helping them by fueling their business?
We try and help the ones who we think are doing the right work in the right way.
So I've been to Colombia and I've learned a little bit about how the industry operates there, and it's not pretty. I heard reports. I put to Sam what I've learned about the industry generally, about the recruiters coaching surrogates and surrogates being relocated. Treatment. What's your response to this?
I am concerned about is a bit of what you're hearing, and I do feel there is a huge risk in Colombia. There's extra pressure to take a lot more cases than they are ready to take on, and I have concerns for the future of Colombia as a destination, given the capacity issues they're facing now.
Just the capacity issues?
No, not just capacity. I mean, surrogate care, surrogate screening and support. We do see countries in Europe doing a lot of movement of surrogates across borders, and that's the thing that concerns us a lot. I'm not surprised that you're hearing about surrogates being taken into cities to work. That's something I would expect to happen.
I also found out that in Colombia, taxpayers are partly footing the bill for foreigners to have their babies through the public health system. Do you think this is fair?
No, it's not fair. That's a real issue if it's happening. We encourage intending parents to take out what we call newborn insurance. If they're not taking out that policy, then I think that's wrong.
I pressed Sam further on this point, given that I'd heard clients, he's advised, had their babies in Colombia through the public health system without additional insurance. I'm going to move on.
Thank you, Claudia. I think I'd rather end the call now. Thanks for having me.
I have other questions for you.
I don't think this interview is really productive for you or me. Thanks a lot.
Are you really going to go? Sam doesn't leave the interview, so I continue. I wanted to ask him about his sponsorship deals. Between 2020 and 2022, while Growing Families was still registered as a not-for-profit, it received more than $1.3 million in sponsorship. Overseas providers pay Growing Families a fee to present at your events, like at webinars, seminars, and conferences, and you recommend those same providers to your clients. How can you state that you're providing advice as an independent third party when you're effectively receiving a fee?
We don't refer clients only to those providers who are presenting at our events. There's a huge range of providers globally who we refer to. Yes, some of the ones who present at the events we refer to, some we don't refer to. It really depends on whether we think they're providing a good service or not. My job is to give people hope. It's not to tell them this is never going to work.
The Australian Law Reform Commission now has a mandate to review our surrogacy laws. Experts hope that the government looks at options to make surrogacy more accessible in Australia, whilst balancing the human rights of those overseas who carry for Australians. For hopeful parents like Lucy and Paul, it's about the certainty of having a fair go without the fear of facing criminal charges.
This is our last hurrah. I don't want to grow old and say, like, only if. It's like, you know what, we gave it our all and it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be.
Just having that baby would be, I think it will be the last thing that will make us whole.